You can't turn on the TV or look at any social media without realizing that GLP-1 agonists are the rage. Whether it's Ozempic or Wegovy or Zepbound, you name the drug, or whether you're doing full dose or micro dosing, everybody's into GLP-1s. So what? Well, first of all, we got to remember what GLP-1 does and actually where it comes from. So GLP-1 is one of the mechanisms of producing satiety, feeling full. And it's a hormone that's produced in our gut when it's made properly, believe it or not, by bacteria in our gut. Now, there are other hormones that reduce hunger. Another one is cholecystokinin, CCK, and that's produced higher up in our gut with ingestion of fat. Now, there are other suppressing hormones. Many of you have probably heard of leptin, which also tells us not to be hungry. But interestingly enough, most overweight people have what's called leptin resistance. Leptin resistance is very similar to insulin resistance. You make lots of insulin or you make lots of leptin, but your brain doesn't respond to it, or your muscles don't respond to insulin. So even though you're making lots of these compounds, you may not respond to them. Okay, so that's how GLP-1s work. So remember, GLP-1s exist because you have a wonderful feedback system from your gut to your hunger centers in your brain that you're full and you don't need to look for anything else. Now, I got very interested in this a few years ago when I was writing The Energy Paradox. And a fascinating study from China I found, which completely changed my mind about where hunger came from. And it's called the gut-centric theory of hunger. And I'll take you back a few years. We used to think that our intestines were just a hollow tube, and whatever we ate went into this hollow tube, and magic happened in this hollow tube, and we would extract sugars, proteins, and fats, and whatever was left over, we pooped out the rear end. And that's what we were taught. With the Human Microbiome Project being finished in 2017, we realized for the first time that there was a rather interesting community of 100 trillion bacteria that might have something to do with digestion, that might have something to do with the organism in general. And we began to realize that rather than this perfect human specimen, we were actually a symbiotic organism where our gut bacteria were a huge part of the way the organism should function properly. So the gut-centric theory of hunger was when our great-great-grandparents were eating food, they ate not only whole food, but they ate that whole food whole, because that was all you could do with those foods. And that food, that whole food, had a lot of leftover things that we could not digest and absorb. Things like starches, like resistant starches, like fiber, that would trickle through our digestive tract and make it down to our colon, our large intestine, where most of our gut bacteria live. And for many, many years, we would get what we needed out of the food, but there'd be a lot left over that the gut bacteria would get to eat and produce all sorts of wonderful compounds, including GLP-1. Imagine that. So as long as we were eating whole foods and eating them whole, our gut buddies, as I call them, got what they wanted to eat. Now fast forward to modern America, unfortunately much of the world, we no longer eat whole food. And we certainly don't eat it whole. We've processed it, we've ultra processed it, and we've stripped out all the things that used to be left over for our gut bacteria. They're gone. All the fiber's gone. All the resistant starches are gone. All the leftovers are gone. So we could still be eating a large amount of food, but the food for our gut buddies is no longer there. So what? Well, under the Chinese study, they took healthy volunteers and put them on a 2-week water fast. All they got was water for 2 weeks. Half the group were given 100 calories a day of fiber, non-absorbable, non-digestible fiber. In other words, there were no calories for the volunteers. The other group just got water. The group that got 100 calories of non-digestible fiber, in other words, food for gut buddies, had absolutely no hunger for the entire 2 weeks. And yet all they were doing is drinking water. The other group, as you can imagine, and as anyone who's done a water fast, like I have, you get pretty doggone hungry for a number of days before other hormone systems kick in. Why did these guys not get hungry? Because the gut buddies were given what they needed to eat. And they sent messages to the brain in the form, among other things, of GLP-1, saying, our needs are met, we're fine, you don't have to go look for anything else. And so they weren't hungry. So that's called the gut-centric theory of hunger. Why that's so important is we now know that with our diets now devoid of fiber, now devoid of the leftovers that our gut bacteria really want, they hear us eating. They hear the gut contracting. And they're going, okay, he just ate something. It's coming. I just have to wait. I know he's eating something. It's coming. And nothing ever arrives. So what happens? Your gut bacteria make hunger hormones like ghrelin that say, what the heck? You just ate something and nothing came. Go find something else and keep eating it until I tell you that my needs are met. Does that sound like a problem in the United States? You're right. We keep eating, and it doesn't make us full. It doesn't stop our hunger because we're not feeding the guys who are in control of our hunger. And the great thing is, it's so easy to manufacture GLP-1 just by changing the foods that give your gut buddies the things they need, whether it's soluble fiber, whether it's fermented foods. The easiest, of course, is vinegar. Any fermented food, like sauerkraut, like kimchi. Believe it or not, cacao is a fermented food. Coffee is a fermented food. Yogurts are fermented foods. Kefirs are fermented foods. Kombucha, as long as it's low sugar, is a fermented food. Any of these and all of these will give your gut buddies what they need to eat. And you'll be amazed at how well your hunger is regulated. One other thing that I'm working on for my next book, you won't believe the ability of various seaweed components to help with satiety. The mechanisms are multiple, but even something as easy as adding spirulina or cracked cell chlorella to your program, or eating fermented seaweeds, or even using seaweed extracts goes a long way to activate GLP-1 production, and actually goes a long way to help seal your gut. As many of you know, I'm always experimenting with food. I'm always experimenting with what I'm working on for my next book. And in the process of writing my upcoming book, I decided to add a number of seaweed-based foods to my diet. I'm not a big seaweed fan. Sorry. I decided to test the theory. And it's not a theory. I decided to test what science experiments have shown. And one of the first things I noticed within days, without changing anything else, except adding these components of seaweed to my diet, that my satiety was really weird. It was like I was injecting GLP-1. And I noticed that literally I didn't want most of my meals. And my wife noticed too. She said, what the heck? Because I was taking home, if we were eating out, half of my meal. Or at home, I'd normally, hey, you're gonna finish that? I'll take it. And I didn't want it. And I'm going, well, this is weird. I haven't changed anything. And I go, well, yes, I have. And this is exactly what the research predicted would happen. And it was literally, and no, I haven't tried GLP-1. It was literally like what my patients describe as the effect of these drugs. This, all of a sudden, they're not interested in eating. And that's exactly what happened to me. So, and again, I don't tell you to do anything until I've tried it. And it was actually an eye-opener for me that it is that sensitive. So, whenever we're thinking about GLP-1s and how well they work, and believe me, they do cut your appetite, let's remember that this was discovered because of what was actually being manufactured by our gut buddies when we used to give them the foods that they needed to thrive. And so the satiety signal comes from the gut by giving the gut buddies what they want to eat. When you're thinking about these drugs, think about making them yourself by giving your gut buddies what they need to eat to help you as a symbiotic organism.